Welcome back to Under the Tree, where caregivers and families across the Greater Lansing area can find honest conversations, local resources, and support they can return to whenever they need it. I'm your host, Robert Valasek, and we're continuing our conversation today with Nick and Rachel from CarePatrol Capital Region. In our last episode, we talked about the emotional side of navigating senior care decisions, the stress, uncertainty, and the common mistakes families often face. Today, we're focusing on the practical side, what the process actually looks like, how families can make informed decisions, and what support is available so people don't have to navigate this journey alone. Nick, Rachel, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for
Thank
having us
you.
back.
Could you walk us through what happens from the very first phone call?
When I get a call, I try to decide with the family if they want to continue the conversation on the phone or if they'd like to meet in person. And if they want to meet in person, we'll set that up. If they'd prefer to do it over the phone, then we can get going right then and there. We start by looking at a number of things. We want to look at a person's personal history, like what did they do for a living, what kind of hobbies and interests do they have, what are they looking for either in a community or home care,
Sure.
and then looking at their activities of daily living, how much help do they need with things right now, and medically what's going on, is the doctor treating them for a number of problems or just a few, how many medications do they take, how often, do they have dementia or other issues
Sure.
going on? And then we look at the financial side. So, do they have insurance that might cover some of this care? Are they veterans that maybe they could benefit from some services through the VA? Or do they need to look at getting connected with Tri-County Office on Aging for Medicaid or Medicaid waiver? And then looking at their budget. So figuring out,
Sure.
what do we have to work with? How can asset wise, how can we make it stretch? We're looking for, especially if it's a community, a forever community. We want to
Okay.
try to get them into a community and that'll be their home for life. Um, and so if we know down the line they're going to need Medicaid waiver, then we're going to try to, focus on those communities that we know participate with the
Okay.
Medicaid waiver. So we go through all of that process and then we send out referrals that make sense, whether it be in home again or whether
Okay.
it's the assisted living, memory care, or independent living with some care services. And then they'll get an email at the same time as the community. And then I usually hear back from the community, yep, we think this might work, or no, we don't, or they'll have additional questions. I'll answer those for
Okay.
them. And then then give it a day or two, call the family back, say, this is what I'm hearing from the communities. What do you think? Which ones would you like to tour? And then we'll set up those tours and then attend the tours with them.
Very nice. How do you help families narrow down the right options? And what factors do you look at?
We look at location, level of care needed. You don't want to have somebody going into an independent community that's moderate to late stage dementia, just looking at those different
Yeah.
things. Of course, the finances, making sure that we're sending options that make sense.
Yeah.
We don't want to send things that are out of the reach and then they're like, I love this, no, you can't afford it,
Right.
so try not to do that. And then just look at that, the violation histories. If we know that there's someone that is on, say they have Parkinson's and they need medications very rigidly prescribed, and we know this community's had trouble with medication management, we might not include that one, even
Okay.
though it may meet some other criteria, unless we talk to the family first and say, hey, we want to ask these questions when we tour,
Sure.
because like maybe they have fixed the problem
Sure.
by
Like
now.
Nick mentioned, the corrective actions that take
Mhm.
place. How are they
Mhm.
addressing those issues? And do you feel comfortable
Yeah.
with those changes?
And then another thing that we look at closely is activities. So
Sure.
are they someone that's, more rural focused? They want to have that garden out back. Are they somebody that more, I'd rather have a lot of indoor activities and, I'd rather
Yeah.
be in a bigger building with more people. really all of those, big community, small community, all of that.
Yeah, and we look at through our Align Care initiative, we have kind of flushed out what used to be emotional, financial, and physical to those 8 dimensions of wellness. So Rachel touched on a bunch of them, like the environmental. Do you want a big community or small community?
Yeah,
Are you a spiritual person? Is it important that
sure.
you have religion that comes in? So priests
Mhm.
or pastors or whatnot. We had someone who wanted a community near her temple because she was big in her community, and so those 8 different things, we really drill down there. Is there an opportunity to give back? Do they have high school students that come in because these folks are, their grandkids live out of state, but they still like to interact with kids? So, I mean, we are really drilling down to that because we know that if you feel like home, you're going to do better. It's not just having this, well, this is your home and this is the new normal. It's, are you emotionally fulfilled? Because if you are, you're going to have better health outcomes.
Oh, I
And
definitely.
that's what I think when we talk about the right options, that is a key point of what we do. And that's why we have, people like Rachel that come from the industry, that have worked it for years, um, that have that understanding.
Yeah, our goal is to try to keep people out of the hospital
Mm.
as much as
Oh yeah, and you want to
possible.
make sure that maybe that first one is their permanent place.
Yeah.
They feel
Mhm.
nice and comfortable instead of opposed to moving all around,
Yeah,
and
that's not good
which
for
can be
anybody.
right. That can be very confusing.
Especially when you start getting down the memory care lane.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. How do you ensure safety and quality?
We monitor their violation history. Our one of our office managers goes into the Lara website monthly and updates any new violations that have happened, and she puts them on a sheet that goes to all of the when we send a referral, it is attached
Okay,
with the email so that they know, okay, these new problems have cropped up. So it's kept very up to date. There's also a link on that goes directly to the state website. So if they just see
okay,
our little synopsis and they think, I'd really like to read the whole report, they have a link right to it. So they
okay.
can just go right and check it out. During tours, we try to guide people to ask questions like, what is your staffing ratio during the day?
That's
What is it
important.
at
Yeah.
night? The training, how much staff training do they get? Are they, just taking an hour and then you're off on your own, or are they
Yeah.
job
No.
shadowing? How does that work? And then how do you replace people if you have call-ins? What systems are in place? If the call light system isn't working, how do you manage that? Do you do half-hour checks, or how, what happens?
Sure. Those are great questions because families probably wouldn't even think to ask those, and you're
Yeah.
really able to ask the really important questions.
Yep.
Mhm.
And we also do follow-ups after the fact. So
Mhm.
we're calling the families to make sure what we thought is actually the case. So if they're struggling or they're having issues, we can identify them. And if they're workable, great. If this isn't the fit we thought it was going to be, then we can explore other options. Again, our goal is we make the recommendation, we hope that they stay. But
Yeah.
again, if there's problems, we want to preempt that, but then that's also part of our continuous improvement as we continue to learn about communities and as they shift and they grow.
They do.
That feedback is important because there's only so much you can find from a report on the internet
Hmm.
or
Correct.
what the marketer is going to tell you. So understanding what families' experiences are also goes into that quality metric. And we are actually tracking those more through. Again, I mentioned our Line Care program. There's
Hmm.
a whole section called Healthcare Outcomes where we're tracking post placement healthcare
Oh, very good.
outcomes, and so we're still working on that. It's a brand new program, but that will also help to inform how we're operating.
Sure, because a family could say, well, my mom or dad were in that similar situation. That outcome turned out great. So,
Mhm.
maybe that'd be a great fit for them as
Mhm.
well. What makes working with Care Patrol different from families trying to do this on their own?
Oh, that's kind of like trying to buy a house on your own,
Yeah,
or
sure.
file your own business taxes on your own, or do your own lawsuit. You can do it all, but is it going to be as effective? Are you going to identify all the needs? I think the big thing is we're the professionals. We're in and out of the communities. Rachel's been in the industry, like I said, for a long time. Here in this area, she knows the community.
Hmm.
All our people that we have know the communities they work in. We just hired somebody up in the Mount Pleasant area. She's from the Mount Pleasant area. We've got people in Grand Rapids. They're from Grand Rapids. And so we know the communities we're in and out. We can help to, when we sit and we assess somebody, we can know what kind of recommendations we would make just based off of that before we get into the formal process. But then we have, we're drilling down those 8 dimensions of wellness. We are showing people the resources that they might not have otherwise known about. They might not know that a loved one qualifies for the waiver program
Oh, yeah.
or the VA benefits or any number of things. And I think that is, we're able to really shorten that process. That makes things more efficient. And for families, it doesn't cost them anymore. We are that no
Yeah,
cost
that's a big
service.
thing.
And, really what we try to do is just take that one more thing off their plate. We're trying to give them less stress, make sure that they're able to have the resources they need to be effective. And it can happen quickly, as opposed to spending your Saturday night dialing up numbers.
Yeah.
You've got Rachel sending you, "Hey, here's where we're at, here's the list of things, here's our plan," and really just guiding you through. And I think the biggest thing is we just really help people manage that stress.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what that process is like. It's got to be very overwhelming. What should families in the Lansing area specifically be aware of?
Lansing has a number of different options. So there are traditional nursing homes. There are independent living with care. There's assisted living. There's home for the aged. Um, s- and then there's traditional assisted living. So we want to make sure people know that there's different options.
Yeah.
And they don't always have to know the difference, but just to know that there are a lot of options in the Lansing area, a lot of good options too. So I think again, I said this before, but don't be afraid of looking at a community and thinking it's going to be like the old way. Like,
Yeah.
have an open mind and take a look at those.
Yep. And I think too, just because a community says it's assisted living doesn't mean it means the same thing for every community. Assisted living isn't a regulated
That's a
term.
good
It's
point.
just a trade term.
Yeah.
And so some assisted livings, they look great, they're beautiful, but they might only be able to do a one-person assist, which is, helping somebody out of bed, but maybe your loved one needs that two-person assist. Well, an assisted living down the road, not as pretty, but they have that staffing ratio and they have the ability to do that. That's definitely something folks should be aware of. Again, not all buildings carry the same service line. They don't have the same kind of staffing ratios. So it's a detail thing, and I think families should be aware of that.
Oh, I think that's huge. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
some are regulated by the government and some aren't.
Yeah.
And so that's something to know too.
Yeah. What questions should families always ask a provider?
I think their staffing ratios are the most important thing. Like, look at the day shift, the evening shift. Obviously, you're going to want to know the bottom line too. Like, what is this going to cost me?
Sure. I'm sure that's a major question.
Each community has its own way of looking at it. So some might have, here's your room and board, you pay this much, and then here's your level of care, and there's different levels, and it's different for each community, so it can get a little complicated. So it's helpful to hear directly from the provider. This is how we do it here.
Okay.
And so I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Yep. I think that a big thing that they need to ask care levels that. But I think another one too is, how long has your staff been with you? Do you have a lot of staff
That's a
turnover?
good
Especially when you're looking at
question.
memory care. I mean, people get routines. I mean, once you get settled in, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for folks to get settled in a community. But if you have the same caregiver all the time, that helps to ease that transition. But if you've got somebody calling out all the time, or you aren't retaining staff, that could create some negative outcomes for folks, especially in memory care. So I think not just the staffing ratio, but the longevity of staff. Solid questions. Plus, it talks about it talks a little bit to the management and the care levels. So
yeah.
And I guess I'd like to add, you should also ask, how do I or who do I go to if I have a concern?
Yes.
So they know directly, like, this is your go-to person if you have a concern. And so they know right from the get-go, or maybe there's a formal paper you have to complete. Like, how do you do it? And who are you supposed to go to? Because typically you're dealing with the marketing staff when you admit, and that person might or might not be the person that you would direct any concerns to. So know that from the beginning, so that if it isn't quite going right, this is who I should contact, and I can get some questions answered in that way.
And we help with that too. If for some reason they do have issues, they can call.
You can help facilitate that conversation with whoever's making those decisions.
It's just one more person. If we can help streamline the process,
sure.
But yeah, we're always happy to help with those conversations too.
For sure.
What are some red flags people should watch out for?
Over promising. I think.
Once
Yeah.
people start making a lot of promises
Yeah,
to you.
when they, I know from my standpoint, I've run into this with a few in-home care providers. When you start saying, "Yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this," and then I ask you an obvious question that you should tell me no, and you say, "I could probably learn that." All right, well, let's first off, you got to get licensed by the state, you know. So I always am. I mean, my big red flag is when people always overpromise and don't give you boundaries when they say, "Well, okay, here's the limit of our care." That to me is always a red flag. But most communities here in Lansing don't ever have that problem. I don't know.
I think also if you're during a tour, you're noticing that the staff is disinterested, or maybe they're on their cell phones, they're not actually
Sure. Are
interacting
they
with the
right
residents.
interacting with the residents? Yeah.
How happy are they? How happy are the residents that are living there? And maybe even ask a resident that you go by as you're touring, like, "Hey, how long have you been here? What do you think about it?" You're gonna get an
Oh, I'm
answer.
sure families would like to hear that answer.
So
After listening today, what's the first step someone should take?
Call Rachel.
if they're having those concerns, yeah, give us a call and we can. There's no timeline. It's your timeline. We don't tell you what you have to do. We don't choose your care options. We just present them and you
try to
make
find the best
decision.
fit. And again, free charge for folks reaching out to you.
And if you start the process and decide to go somewhere else, there's no secret bill. We're not gonna. Oh well, because you didn't.
No,
you
good
didn't
point.
Pick a
Yeah.
community, you now owe us whatever.
Right.
No, we don't. We don't operate that way. And we've had people that we've worked with for in a span of hours trying to find an emergency placement on a Friday afternoon. Don't recommend that.
Yeah, that's tough.
All the way up to somebody that was looking for 5 years. So I mean, everybody's journey, everybody's story is unique. Everyone's journey is different, but we can accommodate pretty much anything like that. Again, within reason. But yeah, I think the first step is just starting to educate. And again, the
That's
sooner
big.
sooner you do it, the more options you have. Once you start getting into those crisis modes, your options start going down, and your quality of life goes with it.
It's true. Rachel, Nick, thank you so much for this valuable information
Thank you.
and for your time today.
Thank you.
Today's conversation reminds us that having guidance during major care decisions can make all the difference, not just for the person needing care, but for the entire family. The earlier families start asking questions and exploring options, the more confident and supported they can feel moving forward. A huge thank you to Nick and Rachel from CarePatrol Capital Region for joining us and sharing their insight. If this episode helped you, consider sharing it with another caregiver, friend, or family member who may need it. Remember to take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next time under the tree.